Hello, world. My next guest and I go way back. She's a force to be reckoned with in the B2b marketing world, and it's been jaw-droppingly amazing to watch her change the face of B2B marketing as we know it. She's built and scaled SaaS marketing teams from the ground up and has an enthusiastic passion for building go-to-market programs that align marketing and sales, all while championing team and revenue growth. She's absolutely unstoppable, and when she's not rocking the marketing world, she's supporting fellow go-to-market leaders as they navigate their career paths, as she's the founder and currently leads the Atlanta chapter of Pavilion, for those listening, formerly known as the Revenue Collective, and she continues to advise early-stage SaaS companies as they build their marketing teams and strategy. I couldn't be more elated to have this powerhouse on the show today, so please join me in welcoming Nicole Wojno Smith, VP Marketing at Tackle.io, to the show. Nicole, are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
I am. That is quite an intro, Jen. Thank you. I'm so excited.
Listen, I've been a huge, we really do go way back. I've been a huge fan of yours, I think, since we met, a few companies ago, and just watching all of the transformation and the incredible initiatives that you've been bringing to organizations, around the globe. But before we dive into Tackle.io and a little bit about, your role as VP Marketing there, I'm always curious to learn when we bring our guests on the show. Could you give a brief look at your professional journey and perhaps how you actually found yourself as VP Marketing at Tackle.io?
Yeah, sure. That's a great way to start. So the short version is I'm kind of a hybrid marketer. So I grew up on the agency side at first, and I was in public relations before I swapped to running marketing for the agency I was at, which was focused on B2B healthcare IT companies. And it was a really unique experience there because I had the opportunity to build my brand, content, and demand gen muscle at the same time. And while I was at that agency, I started their marketing automation division, which was really fun. And I got to help our customers stand up their marketing automation platforms and build demand gen programs from the ground up. And it was still really new back in the day because healthcare IT is usually a bit of a laggard industry. And so this was all new for them. And that was really my startup experience, my first one. And we were eventually acquired by a PE firm and merged with 5 other agencies. So after a year, I decided to take the next step. And I then went on to an early stage startup that was focused on the customer success space. And that's where, Jen, I met you and that great Oktopost team. And I had the opportunity there to build the marketing team and programs from the ground up and scale the company with them. And after about nearly 4 years there, I started talking to Tackle, and I'm now lucky enough to be getting to do this for the 3rd time. I've now been at Tackle for 2 years, and I started as the first marketer. We now have a marketing team of 17 people, and we've gone from seed stage to Series C while I've been here. So it's been quite an amazing journey so far.
It's absolutely incredible. And, from one startup enthusiast to another, I love cheering for fellow women in leadership roles, especially in startups, because the environment is so fast paced. It's so dynamic. You never know what's going to be thrown at you. And I'm like, wow, that's a perfect person to bring on this show, right? Because we're going to start throwing those curveballs. But, before we do, I do want to quickly ask in one sentence or quick elevator pitch, if you will, what is the value that Tackle.io is currently bringing to your customers today? What do you do?
Yep. So we're a software company, and we really exist to make the process of buying and selling software easier and more efficient through the cloud marketplaces, which right now it's AWS, Microsoft, Google, and Red Hat Marketplace. So simple elevator pitch there.
Brilliant. We'll come back to it in a moment. So with that said, I think getting to the meat of the show, right? And what's on everybody's mind listening in, getting a VP marketer on the show, thinking about your day-to-day, what on earth is keeping you up at night professionally these days?
How much time do you have? There are definitely a lot of things, but The one thing I think about a lot, and that my team and I are always talking about, and thinking about how do we overcome this. I think everyone's probably aware that the B2B buying cycle has really changed, and I think a lot of this too is a result of the pandemic and the shifts we've seen, and buyers wanting to be served more like consumers rather than B2B software buyers, and buyers are in charge of the process. Whether I think a lot of people want to admit this or now, it's not marketers or sellers that are dictating the process. And I really don't think that marketing, and especially the perception that other departments may have of marketing, have changed enough to allow marketing to really embrace this change. So an example I might give is that, a lot of people talk about the dark funnel, and what's become an even bigger conversation lately is dark social, and like some of those invisible shares that happen through channels like communities, text messages, emails, and things like that. And this is a huge part of how buyers buy. And I know personally that I don't think I've bought any software in the past 2 years that I haven't gone into communities I'm in, like Pavilion or CMO Coffee Club, and asking for advice from other CMOs and VPs of marketing, or search, even just doing a search in those communities for that certain software. And if people have a lot of gripes about it or complaints, I'm probably like, whoa, that's a red flag. So, but I think expectations from a lot of teams are still that marketing just might equal demand gen. And people might think that just means placing ads or running campaigns, or on the worst end of the spectrum is gating a white paper for demand gen to get leads. But none of this is effective, and we just cannot be marketing to people in the same way we used to. And we have to be influencing buyers and reaching them in every area they exist, which is some of these things that we cannot measure, like communities, and we don't have visibility into these and a clear way to always measure that. And I think that's a really big, issue that keeps me up at night, is how do we influence all these different aspects of the buyer's journey that we can't truly measure and see all the time.
It's interesting that that's what's keeping you up. And I have to say it's on my mind constantly. And I was recently having a conversation with a peer around the fact that the B2B buyer journey has changed so much so that as marketers who, you could argue marketing and sales, we've once been in control, maybe for lack of better words, but we were able to really control the message, what was said about us. And now it's completely in the consumer and the customer's hand to be controlling that narrative. And, kind of what we were speaking about was the power of, G2 and reviews. I don't think I've bought a piece of software without doing my due diligence, trusting and verifying, and heading on over to G2 and Capterra and doing the same thing that you mentioned, right? So it definitely has changed. And I think what that leads me to wonder, and you may not have an answer for this, but being right, one of the biggest buzzwords in marketing, right? You want to be a data-driven marketer. And right, that's everywhere. You look on people's LinkedIn profiles, they're data-driven marketers. You're hiring, they're data-driven marketers. Leadership wants data-driven decision-making in marketers. But what you're speaking about, it's so challenging. It must be, because right, we're not necessarily controlling the narrative or the places where our customers are. We kind of have to go and meet them where they are, and reach deep into our communities. So how could you explain perhaps how you are measuring that, or maybe even talk about broader, the evolution of the metrics, and what should we be looking at?
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And it's so hard. There's this push and pull between traditional versus new ways of measurement. The traditional way is like your marketing funnel, and the board and everyone else loves to see these. And I'm having such a struggle and an issue with it, because I don't think marketing is this linear funnel anymore. You cannot say that someone came in, as a new visitor from organic search to the website, and they just requested a demo, and boom, the marketing team gets to go out and celebrate now because they, that turned into a sales qualified lead. But, I think anyone that's in marketing knows that there's been 15 to 20 other interactions with your brand that have happened before they came to the site. And some of it's marketing, some of it is probably sales, some of it could be from partner and alliance relations and things like that. But as I think about the new funnel and the way of measuring marketing, I think everyone really has to be comfortable with brand being a bigger driver of revenue. First off, demand gen is just getting more and more expensive, and it's competitive to get in front of buyers. And I do also think sophisticated buyers are very numb to those traditional demand gen marketing tactics and being marketed at, instead of, getting to consume the information on their terms and when they're ready and educating themselves. And I also don't believe people buy from a brand that they've never heard of or that their peers didn't tell them about. So, kind of going back to what we were talking about, if like they're going to go to G2 and do their own research. And so, like we said, like there's not that linear way to measure all those brand touch points right now and interactions, and it doesn't align perfectly to a funnel approach, but you have to be spending like that budget money and resources into those leading indicators to create those outcomes. And, I think there's ways to look at it. And, I was talking about this last week with Rob Singrieve, a CMO at OutSystems, and we did a webinar talking about some of these topics. And, some of the things he was talking about too, that we were both doing, is looking at Google Trends, like, just like, are more people looking for you today than they were yesterday? You can then find connection to like the events you're doing, PR that you're putting out, and even like compare that to competitors. And then looking at like, what's the one thing people did before they made a decision or right before they made contact with you? And this can help you like decide where to invest more in those types of programs, or which prospecting activities you should be doing differently for different audiences. So, thinking about things like that to measure and look at over time for trends, I think gives you a really helpful perspective of kind of like some of those new metrics that you should be looking at as a marketer.
Absolutely. And I can't imagine it's easy. I'm going to call this one out because you mentioned, right, one of the things keeping you up at night regarding kind of the funnel, right? There's this old funnel, old way of doing things, and the new funnel, perhaps, or a broken funnel that we're currently trying to mend or fix or band-aid for right now. I'm not even sure where we are with that. But how do you, as a VP marketer, who's literally in the trenches, understanding, right, that this old kind of funnel thinking isn't the way it needs to be, but you still have a responsibility and a due diligence to report up to your board in a language they understand. So how are you tackling that?
Yeah, it's really hard. I think it's a conversation. Like you have to start having that conversation. And I don't think it happens like in one board meeting, or even, it has to be a continuous conversation. There's still a desire, like I was saying, for people to see what they're comfortable with. And that's the traditional funnel a lot of times, that shows the visitors to leads, to MQLs, to ops, to close one, and conversion rates. But, it's not that linear. It's hard to have that conversation and show all this and the impact of brand. And, buyers are going to appear way lower, and you don't necessarily know why if you think about this in the traditional way. So I think, we're still going to have to show that traditional funnel, but you have to start opening up that conversation and show different examples of, where buyers are coming in, start talking about, the Google trends you're seeing, where people are looking for you, whether it's pulling data from like, a Salesforce campaign to show, hey, these are the 15 things they did before they got to us. And we have seen a trend that, 10 of these people right before they, made this decision, they came to this, event we were having on our road shows. And this is what, has influenced them to then choose Tackle. So I think if you start showing more of that, and then they understand that, like, yes, this quarter, we did not have this traditional funnel, it can start to have those conversations where maybe that's not the most impactful thing you can actually show and present in a board meeting going forward. And yeah, I don't have the silver bullet. I would love to, I hope maybe I can come on in a year and tell you, like, Jen, I figured this out. I have this great new way to show everything, but I'm starting to try to build that and have better conversations around that.
So what I'm hearing is that you're going to be back in a year from today. So we are going to hold you to that. Yes. And that way you're going to give us the playbook, and we're going to talk about what you've learned on that journey. So that I'm very excited for. So I'm going to transition for a moment to talk about the things I think all marketers and sales and organizations love and hate to talk about, which is leads, right? You're the VP marketer. And oftentimes we know sales are coming at you, show me the leads. Where are the leads? And when leads are good, right, people are happy. When leads are less good, it's the Hunger Games. I think I had one guest tell me that. So in your opinion, why do you think the funnel is broken? And where do you think B2B marketers can be doing better?
Yeah. I hate like the lead conversation of like, why don't we have more leads here and give us leads? And because what that turns into is such a force on marketers to do things that are not really focused on quality, and it's focused on quantity instead. And I think that's then where every organization gets tripped up, and then it's junk in, junk out, and none of that ends up being things sales like. And then it's that kind of fight between marketing and sales of, well, you're giving us crap leads. Well, and then marketing saying like, you're not working the leads we're giving you, And so what I think is like, what I really like to do with sales is have a good relationship built from the get-go with leadership, and, building a culture based on business outcomes versus activity. And I think if you have really good alignment on what makes a good fit account, and you can tie that to conversations such as, these accounts have the potential with this, account-based marketing campaign or campaign we're doing to drive $1 million in pipeline. That becomes more of an outcome-driven conversation that sales can understand, rather than one focused on, sales coming and saying like, I need more leads, go write a white paper and gate that or something. But you really have to start with like clear definitions of, what a qualified account is, a shared vocabulary, and a visibility into, what accounts you're selecting and why. And I think when you can think about everything, whether you are targeting, SMB businesses or enterprise, but think about them all from an account perspective rather than a lead perspective and that contact, then that really changes the game in terms of like how sales and marketing can think about this and really work together from the get-go on that conversation. And that's where I've seen a lot of that stuff be fixed and have a better break, so there's not that breakdown in the funnel.
I love that. I'm thinking about what you just said, right? Like you think about the sale or the what you're learning from an account on an account level, and rather like an individual contact or lead level, it flips the script. And it reminds me, I used to give a presentation where I would like show like 3 images of a bigger image and have the audience guess, right? Like, what is this? And, the answers would be all over the place. It was usually an elephant was the big picture, had nothing to do with marketing. And, you show like a gray piece, a yellow piece, wherever, and everybody's guessing. But the reason why I did that, right, it was like the whole importance of you can't just zoom in, you have to zoom out and see the bigger picture. And I think what you just shared proves that, right? That by focusing on the account, not only are you challenging your sales team to zoom out and see the whole picture of an account and really how to win the entire account and all the people inside, right? I think it's also doing the same for marketing on the types of tactics, and going back to what you shared about looking at the trends, right, in Google and the intent data, if you will. I think that it all comes together, and that's a big piece of how the buyer journey has changed. So I'm going to shift for a second, because I want to throw out some stats, right? We're marketers. Who doesn't love a good stat?
Oh, yeah.
But what we've been finding this year, right, is according to CMOs, the top 2 most effective B2B marketing initiatives during last year have been social media marketing, coming in at around 78%. And this is all from a CMO survey we ran last year, and email marketing, which is around 55%. And I'm just curious, right? After interviewing 200 CMOs and knowing that social media is really the anchor of a lot of B2B social media strategies, could you get a little radically transparent with us about what your social strategy or plan for 2022 looks like?
Yeah, of course. So I think before talking about like specific channels, one thing I'm definitely investing more in this year is getting deeper on segmentation and personas. And I think this is done through great product marketing. I think a lot of organizations wait too long to invest in that. And you can't really build, I think, an effective marketing plan if you don't truly know your buyers and what their challenges are and needs. And so that's one thing like we're very focused on this year. And then I think it's probably not shocking. I'm investing a lot in brand, and social is a huge part of this strategy for us. So social is where prospects have a lot of their first interactions with Tackle. And we actually drive 10% of our traffic to the website from our social channels. And we do use Oktopost. We are big fans of that for our employee advocacy. And, I did pull a stat for this, but it's increased our reach by 59% from using that. So that is huge for us. And so our employees are sharing, great things about not even, it is about like tackle product stuff, but it's third, party content, it's our blogs and, webinars and upcoming events. And, people are engaging with that and then coming to the website to register for these things or reading more and deep diving. So it's been a huge part of our brand strategy.
Nice.
And then, demand is also, obviously a huge part of our investment too. But, as I think about demand in 2022, I think there's going to be a shift from online for everything. As we talked about, I think it's just everything, it's oversaturated. People are getting tired of seeing ads all the time. And that doesn't mean we're abandoning digital, but it's like, how do we supplement this to gain mind share with buyers? So maybe thinking about things like, direct mail or gifting strategies and things like that, that we can incorporate, or in-person events and what that looks like. And then I think the final piece of what 2022 looks like is really a huge investment in our customers and supporting them along their journey. They want to be connected to others, to share best practices, to learn from others, and do it in a way that, they can have real talk and be transparent as well. And so it's a big area of focus. So it's, how do we build communities? How do we, set them up to have these conversations? And I think, again, customer marketing can be a very underinvested area in a lot of companies. And that's something we're doubling down on in 2022.
Nice. So I kind of want to ask, it's kind of a curveball, but I want to ask, right, looking at everything that you've achieved, and, we talked about employee advocacy, we spoke about kind of looking at the funnels and the different metrics on your journey as VP marketer, knowing what you know today about all the shifts, how the funnel has changed, the impact of employee advocacy.
Yeah.
What is one thing you wish you would have known a year ago that you know today that would have changed a decision you've made, or a thought perhaps, or a mindset that you have?
That's a really good question. Probably something I wish I'd known a year ago would be, I would probably honestly have done a lot of some of our brand stuff a lot sooner, and content pieces. We were outsourcing a lot of content last year. And I think it's so hard for someone else to write in your voice and tone and understand you as well as you do when you're living this day to day. And we just now like made a decision in Q4 to bring all our content in-house and our brand and design work. And so we are building out a super robust brand and content team in-house. And it's making a huge difference and impact already in what we're doing. And we're seeing, just huge changes across what we're able to produce in terms of like the speed of our content, the quality of our content, the impact, like the responses from customers that we're getting on what we're writing. And I wish I had done that a lot sooner. And instead of, spending money on agencies for some of that, just done it ourselves. I
love that radically transparentness, because especially because you had shared in the beginning that you started at an agency. So I really love that you're, that's like a full circle moment. So I want to be conscious of time, because I know we stick to, our 20-30 minute episodes and getting in, if you're walking your dog or eating some lunch. I have one last question for you, and this is my favorite one. But before this interview, I probably stalked your LinkedIn profile a million bajillion times. And there's so much to learn about you. You've written incredible pieces. If you Google your name, just fabulous things come up, both in the community, outside of the community. But what's one thing you can tell us today about yourself that if we were all right now to go to LinkedIn and look at your LinkedIn profile, that we wouldn't be able to know?
Yeah. So this is one thing that's not on LinkedIn, but it is related to my careers that a lot of people don't know. But my first job out of college was actually selling office supplies door to door at different businesses.
What?
Yeah, and it was purely commission based, and it was the toughest job in the world. I think I lasted there for like 4 months and was like, I cannot do this. It has given me so much respect, obviously, for my sales counterparts and what they do. And I think it was a great first job to have. But, I quickly realized like I cannot be, living this sales life. But yeah, you will not find that on my LinkedIn profile.
I love that. I have to ask, what was the most popular supply that sold?
Paper.
Paper.
Like paper for your printer. Yes. That was our biggest selling point.
Paper anymore.
And
what is
yeah,
that?
no one, I mean, exactly. Like no one buys that nowadays, but back then that might give away my age, like shows how popular that was. And we were also taught to sell that first, because if someone buys paper, that made them sticky and likely to come purchase again. So
I just learned something I never knew before about you, Nicole, and also about sales. So thank you.
right.
Thank you so much. This was a great interview. Anyone listening in wants to learn more about Tackle.io, wants to connect with you, wants to learn more about the Revenue Collective Pavilion. Where can we find you? What's the best place to connect?
Yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn, or if you want to learn about Tackle, go to Tackle's website, tackle.io. But yeah, definitely hit me up on LinkedIn. Always willing to have a chat with anyone.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you so much, Jen. This was so fun.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast, brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.